proud to be un-PC. Written by Greg Huffman. Narrated by Brandale Elmore. I am proud to be un-PC. Or at the very least, not ashamed of it. For all the talk about progress when it comes to freedom of speech, I can't help but feel out of sync with current trends of society and their discomfort with it. Many seem chagrined by the First Amendment, begrudgingly conceding its very existence as some bête noire roadblock anathema to their aims. The right's "I'm not racist, but" is paralleled by the left's, or New Puritanism's, "I'm all for freedom of speech, but." The societal value of Voltaire's attributed quote, "I may disagree with what you say, but I'll fight till the death your right to say it," is at an all-time low. When it comes to these big tech companies controlling the town square with social media, there are non-government control holds on public discourse, and thus they run unchecked by the First Amendment. An irascibility I have is whenever someone even brings up freedom of speech. There is almost inevitably an inexcrutable interlink to the First Amendment in the conceptualization of those involved in the discussion. They will say, freedom of speech only protects you from government. Incorrect. The First Amendment, yes, sure, but freedom of speech should be about so much more than just the government. Perhaps a new metric we should be using is the idea of the culture of free speech. Do we have a culture of free speech? The trends and trajectory of the future seem to be aiming further away from those sites. It's almost become conventional wisdom that, sure, you can say whatever you like, but what you say should have consequences. They always leave that vague. They don't specify what consequences. Should a group of nuts throw Molotov cocktails at my house for expressing my mind? That's a consequence. Should I lose my job and ability to support myself and my family because I fought against the current of what's acceptable to say? A dead thing can go with the stream, but only a living thing can go against it. G.K. Chesterton. The right will claim to want freedom of speech, but of course they will be hypocrites about it, stifling it whenever it's not the kind that only protects what they want. So they're hardly advocates of the Voltaire philosophy. And the left? Well, they're the ones that accuse everyone else of using it as a crutch for bigotry. For a group of people who accuse others of crypto-fascism, you'd think that they would want you to go out yourself as a bigot if expressing your heart led you to spouting racial slurs or calling people faggots. Carlin had his 7 dirty words: shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. These offended the old Puritans. The SJWs, the wokes, the politically correct, they all spout those freely and promiscuously. And yet, what makes them the new Puritans is that they have at least 4 words they don't want to hear: nigger, faggot, retard, and rape. To combine those all into an edgelording sentence would and will send them reeling. While they mock the old Puritans for how snooty and prudy they were, afraid of some silly old words. And yet, they don't realize the hypocrisy of it. I don't mean that they merely don't like the bigotry associated with the use of such words. It goes further than that. They've manifested full-on fetishism of those words and have had tabooized them. Rape is a little different than the others, just a triggering word, preferably when they want you to say SA for sexual assault. But for sure, casual use of the other three will send many of them conjuring the spirit of Jean-Paul Marat. They will be calling for your head, your ouster from society, and invoking Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance. Just the other day, I had someone invoke the paradox of tolerance over a fucking chicken sandwich. Okay, I'm strawmanning a little bit here. We are talking about Chick-fil-A. But surely when Karl Popper was warning society of the dangers of too much tolerance for the intolerant, he wouldn't have pushed it as ridiculously as an overall petty ethical chicken sandwich company who donates to the Salvation Army. I would be willing to bet that he would accuse them of invoking his worries a little too liberally, let's say. And pushing those boundaries I do think is bad for the Overton window. I think it also pushes people into the fringes. It's why you see conservatives going on the attack against a Wolfenstein game. You might ask why some on the right are getting defensive when a game about Nazi killing comes out, a topic that previously was universally accepted as a fair target for everyone to agree on. When people stopped believing in Satan and his demons, or that Satan was completely evil, we needed a new bad guy, and that bad guy was Hitler and his Nazis. But these people aren't identifying with Nazis. They are defending being accused of being a Nazi. So they end up standing up for verifiable Nazis, because they've been called Nazis so much that they think even calling someone a Nazi is an aspersion on them, and so they build up sympathies for anyone so labeled. The left may say this is a moral failing of that individual. Maybe that's true. If the left turns a relatively centrist conservative into a full-blown fascist, then they may be fair in saying that ultimately this person needs to accept personal responsibility for their heel turn, and they're probably correct. No matter how many people they have done this to, they all need to accept responsibility for their new identities. However, can't we at least say that on a sociological level, convincing conservatives to identify with and sympathize with Nazis is dangerous? On an individual level is one thing, but pushing many of a group into radicalism has sociological implications that the pushers still played a part in and are doing a disservice to general well-being. But speaking of being a Marat, lately I've seen some online gatekeeping where someone, usually a white woman, will post, "If you say nigger, faggot, retard, take me off your friends list right now." And in fact, just about 2 days ago, I witnessed just such a chick who has a history of posts over-concerned with social cohesion and obviously asking if she did or said the right thing. Posting screenshots of 3 people who say they use the word retard for jokes, and made a big show about how she was removing them from her friends list. I mean, fine. If you feel such a way that it brings you discomfort, by all means, remove the person. But why make a show about it? These days, I try not to get involved with too much online drama, and I'm not quite the edgelord I used to be, but still am one, just not as militant. However, after reading all of her comments of Puritan women all in agreement with her, I didn't feel right to let it sit without pushback. I merely posted a link to the full retard scene from Tropic Thunder, and X'd out. Later on, maybe the following day, I saw that I had a mention on Facebook's alerts. I had a mix of inbox anxiety and sharpened daggers in my mouth. I knew I had to be ready for a showdown. To my surprise, she hesitantly said she actually liked that movie and that it was probably made in a time before they knew that calling someone a retard caused offense. I could sense the guilt in her response. She liked the movie, but felt guilty over it because someone would tell her she was a bad person, someone in her personal circle. I've changed since then as well. I'm just going to post my response here, free of editing and correction, so it's in the casual form of an online response. It's been known since the 90s that the world has been offensive. They also did blackface in the movie, which, come on, we all know how controversial that is, even at that time. I think you have to think of edgelord humor as akin to BDSM. To me, violence just isn't sexy. It seems to be its direct opposite. With edgelord humor, the very fact that what someone says is a shock to societal norms is what causes the pleasure of it. Of course, if you just spam edgelord words and use them haphazardly, it has the effect of trying too hard and just being an asshole. But with a well-timed offense, you can make a superb joke. Many comedians still utilize bits of un-PC language to get that jolt from their audiences. That's the power of it. Many still look back fondly on the movie, not in spite of its offenses, but because of them in a way. Because it's so hard to get now and was hard to do even then. People can only be so in tune with sensitivities for so long before they get desensitized to it and need an outlet for shock behavior. And that movie provided, and still does provide, that. I'm not as much of an edgelord as I once was, but if I had to live a life devoid of any offense, I think I would die of anodyne boredom. What people say amongst themselves, I think, should be unbound as long as they aren't offended. Truly. By the words said. When used online, of course, matters become more complex, and I don't know the answer to it. Creates morally fraught scenarios. I kinda like how I thought to compare it to BDSM. It's somewhat apt. And that's the thing, it's an escape from anodyne sanitized reality. It releases tension. Humor should be comparable to bedroom activities in that you should be able to escape the social courtesies and be allowed to indulge in what society's eyes turn from. Or really, what they can't look away from and blame you for their eyes' incontinence of volition. They truly aren't Nazis, because they can't not see whatever heinous insults you've spewed forth. Do you not see what I did there? In the very least, it should be allowed in your own private residence, amongst friends that don't find personal offense via the words you say. And that's the thing. Who are we protecting by not using these words? If they are used devoid from their harmful usual intentions, we are ultimately saying that merely encountering these words causes hurt. But this is true of many subjects that can come up if one has a personally bad experience that is raw for them. Talking about seeing a dead dog in the road can jolt a person who's recently had a dead pet. Joking about stealing something can remind a recently pilfered of their rough luck. Many things can produce that all too familiar uncomfortable jolt. Lord knows I've felt it without telling someone the need to shut the fuck up. Or, if I'm amongst private friends, I will tell them why I don't want them talking about it at the moment. And if they are a good friend, they will cease using it in my presence, but are free to use it in the presence of others if they have no objection. So why should we cease to use these words amongst friends if it doesn't jolt them? Does merely saying them push us further towards bigotry? Like a man doing satire so long he becomes the joke? It seems preposterous to me. And if we're asked by society to beg for forgiveness if caught telling a taboo joke, who do we ask for forgiveness? The thing I think that differentiates many on the left from many on the right is who they want to show kindness to. I mean, not in the way you might think. I think the left wants to be kind to a mass group over an individual, whereas the right will be kind to an individual in spite of a faceless group. To provide an example, an article that Christopher Hitchens wrote for Slate about Borat, where he quotes a New Statesman article where the author accuses the America that Borat encounters as being complicit, providing tacit acceptance and feeling no compunction for his bigoted statements. Hitchens goes on to say that this is merely the pedantic hospitality of those people, and then also says, and this time I'll use quotes, "The only people who are flat out rude and patronizing to our curious foreigner are the stone-faced liberal Amazons of the veteran feminists of America, surely natural readers of the New Statesman." And to me, that's one thing I've liked about living in the South. Even when I go to a shop or restaurant in the boondocks of East Texas, dressed like a flaming, ostentatious faggot, I should be able to use the word merely because I'm more likely to be accused of this more than many actual gay people who don't dress so garishly. My effeminate voice doesn't help. And perhaps I get a few looks from elderly people who shake their heads. They still accept me and won't confront me. But many left-wing people are sanctimoniously confrontational, desperate to be assholes for a good cause. So many people get such a thrill out of being so awful as long as they can morally justify it. Quite the win-win for them. Some will probably argue that this is a good thing. I've heard people like Trevor Noah say, "If you hear someone that says something that is offensive, don't let it pass. Press back on it." That's their ethos. To some extent, I could agree, but not in the way they handle it. You need to be diplomatic and give the person the benefit of the doubt and be respectful. But if you act supercilious about it, they will just resent you for being stuck up with a stick up your ass. Who wants to apologize to shitbags like these? And why do we owe them apologies? Before we go on, speaking of apologizing, let me gift my readers here with a lovely and apropos quote. "It is a good rule in life never to apologize. The right sort of people do not want apologies, and the wrong sort take a mean advantage of them." P.G. Wodehouse. Perfect. But speaking of jokes, that's probably the biggest issue I take with well, I shouldn't call them liberal. It's semantically not very accurate. Leftists or SJWs, blah blah. They have this new concept of jokes either punching up or punching down. Like if I say, "What do you call a black man that goes to college?" "Janitor." They would say that's an example of punching down. Reminds me of a point David Denby made in the last book I completed reading, The Great Books. He said that the left frames everything in terms of power. Such a fun way to live. Everything is class warfare and power differentials. But thinking of jokes as punching is an insult to humor. Jokes shouldn't be a weapon. They should disarm. If we're talking about punching when it comes to jokes, we should talk about punching sideways, right into my friend's ribs. Because humor is used to self-deprecate, amiably tease, and bond with someone. If the left takes our jokes, that's one less way to bond with someone. To poke fun at one another is a way to feel comfortable around each other. The alternative is to walk on ice and eggshells. Jokes break the ice and pop those eggs in a satisfying flourish. To be told, "That's not funny," is ridiculous. Even more so if the person laughs first. How are you going to laugh at a joke, especially if you're trying not to laugh, but it's forced out of you by your natural reaction? That's literally the best proof of something being funny. So you laugh at it guiltily and then tell someone it's not funny. Besides, even if you don't find something funny, who are you to tell another person what is funny or not? Fuck off with that sacrosanct shit. Except for rape. Rape is literally never funny. I've never laughed while doing it. I was once told I was targeted by a group of online feminists for making this joke, but nothing ever came of it. It probably helps that I'm black, but only from the job down. You know, how these good people want to call your boss so you can lose the ability to feed and house yourself and your family. But could you imagine living in the humorless worlds these people inhabit? Why would you want to be so ashamed to laugh at a joke? And what kind of hall monitor vibes must you be putting out to try and take away people telling off-color jokes to each other? I recognize that edgelord humor is out of vogue, but if that's the kind of joke-telling that I enjoy, should I deprive myself of it when it hurts no one? That's the thing. Telling these jokes hurts no one. Why should anyone push back against the goals of societal progress as long as it doesn't step on their toes in its expansion? All I ask you, good sir, is to stand off my feet so that I may march with you for a brighter future. You would have to reach so fucking convolutedly and ridiculously to try to explain how these things cause harm. And in the process, you are making me and us come to loggerheads with your ambitions because it puts in peril the kind of culture I and we enjoy. Genuine crypto-fascists aren't going to tell these jokes. It'd be too suspiciously revealing. The only people who are going to comfortably tell such a joke are people who don't really mean it. Trust me, I've lived in the South. These people don't tell jokes you guiltily laugh at. I recall standing around a group of people at a get-together and heard someone straight up, casually, and this was back in 2008-2009, bring up that nigger getting into office. It sent a jolt right up me, all right. A very discomforting one. The opposite of the frisson you get from a joke told to shock polite society. It just leaves you feeling gross. There was a way you could put what that shithead said into joke form. And the joke form almost mocks the people that really feel that way. The joke works because it's so ridiculous to be genuinely racist, to be that tribal. There's a difference between someone saying what that guy said and Clint Eastwood in Escape from Alcatraz when he says, "I just don't like niggers." It's such a good line, but if you haven't seen it, it would be easy not to appreciate it for the lack of context. But that's the thing. Context. Context is more important than just to apply taboo status to a word and say it should never ever be spoken under any circumstances. Don't you understand that people hate to be told what to do? We have contrarians that you tell them what not to say, and they want to say that very thing because fuck society and their demands. Do you really want to live in a society devoid of contrarians pushing back against convention and peer pressure? When someone says, "You can't use that word," where are they even pulling this axiom from? If a white guy says he doesn't mind my using of the N-word in his presence, the SJWs will just say, well, he doesn't count because he's white. If a black guy says he doesn't mind, the SJW will say, he doesn't speak for all black people. So who is it that controls the language? Has anyone pulled a marginal group for the referendum on a slur? The Washington Post published a poll in 2016 that found 9 out of 10 Native Americans didn't mind the Redskin team name. But did it sway the dogma of the SJWs? If it doesn't come down to the opinion of individuals the conversation is aimed at, and if it isn't decided by the majority opinion of the marginalized group in vote, then what or who decides if a joke must be banned from societal use? It must just be their dogma, the very thing they demand to not have pushed on them from Christian groups. Those claiming to care about social justice and ethics, many of them, don't really care enough about putting in the work to make a better world. You want to know the trick to societal progress? Kindness. Dunking on Nazis or punching them isn't going to change their opinions. It strengthens them with a calloused padding. Those that have a way to live can endure anyhow, said Nietzsche, and you are giving them a noble struggle via the Galileo Gambit. The new Puritans do it to the bigots to feel superior to them. It's less satisfying to apply the effort to what would really convince them to change their hardened stances. You have to hear them out, their insecurities, their woes, their fears, their own resentments of society. If you try to feel or see their pain and you give understanding to their irrational beliefs, then you can potentially sublimate what they think and practice to something healthier and less pernicious. Hug a fascist and give them a glow in their soul that wanes that hate that they have fortifying their hearts. I've made friends with those harboring what I suspected to be true hatred, and while outer society may say I'm guilty by association, their sanctimony merely purifies the bubbles of all of these factions. But popping those bubbles and introducing new concepts to them through love and kindness, that's the key. I believe in making friends with pariahs. It makes them more protean to your inputs rather than adversarial. Penn Jillette is a hero of mine, and he stated how in making friends with conservatives, he made them affable and amenable to atheists instead of seeing them as alien. I can think of at least one alt-right friend I've had an edifying effect on as well. Whereas I can't think of a single one where, after I destroyed them in debate, utterly embarrassing them, they acknowledged the errors of their way and turncoated the moment and became an ally to the beauty of an all-encompassing and coexisting society. And that's also the thing when you approach hate with hate. They see your equality and love society as hypocrisy. Why should they believe you're so empathetic when every member of your tribe reacts to them with scorn and derision? The people telling us not to use certain jokes, they may have the window dressing of a good cause, but their means are the grossest aspects of authoritarianism. The edgelords are the ones pushing back against control. You don't want me to use the word retard? That seems pretty retarded. And some words just are so aesthetically pragmatic, they should be reappropriated in a variety of ways. Like the F-word episode of South Park. It feels good to call someone a fag. It's just got a pulchritudinous, dulcet tone about it. Fag. Why not keep such a fun word around if it be free from hate? Or at least the usual connotated hate. When I was working at Kmart while living in Washington State, this white kid I worked with was sitting with all of his coworkers. This was about November 2007, and said, "Nigger is just such a funny word to say. Nigger." And no one pushed back. No one thought he was racist. I mean, you could accuse such people of cultural insensitivity, but it's such a bullshit application of the word racist because even the people using that word must know they don't fit the dictionary definition of that word. Edgelords aren't a group of tribalists who band together based on the superiority of the white race. They may say 1488 ironically, but they don't believe in the words they represent. I'm fond of revisiting the problematic movies of the 80s because there is something refreshingly unrefined about the way people spoke in them. There's no funnier scene than the shower scene in the 1985 Jim Carrey film Once Bitten. Fags in the shower! Fags in the shower! Fag alert! Fag alert! In some ways, it's even funnier in modern times because we're so starved for this type of humor. I can't control what I find to be funny. A laugh, if it emanates from my mouth, is out of my control. All I can do is try my best to suppress it. When do I become an incorrigible bigot? Is it the failing to prevent the laugh from escaping that makes it so? Or makes me so? If I have to suppress the laugh in the first place, is that it? What if I just laugh to myself in my own head without any external sign of it showing? Am I still a bigot then? Just for the thought crime of my natural, incurable disposition? Just as a man is gay whether he acts on it or not, if you find these ribald jokes humorous, you're an edgelord in your heart. Let's not let the scourge of anti-social justice warriors get away with their deleterious opening salvo against our culture. I fear they may have left an indelible stain of guilt upon our innocent laughing hearts. Consciences singed past the mere gaslight of sinless sin. The unforgiveness of seeing the horror of macabre existence and cracking a smile. Not even levity at suicide in the face of it all can be brooked. Gallows humor be damned and cancelled. Pain of life can be handled with either tears or laughter, and they aim to remove the most comforting option. Everything must be encountered solemnly. Pushback has been a long time coming, and it may be left for a future Charlotte Corday to bring a knife to fight back for humor of all strands to return to all of the art mediums. You can be all for social justice and fight against those authoritarian New Puritans. Recognize them for what they are, a new strain of Puritan. They are authoritarian fascists, exhibiting a case of anti-nominative determinism. God damn it. I'm trying, man. You're gonna have to edit this shit. Recognize them for what they are, a new strain of Puritan. They are authoritarian fascists exhibiting a case of anti-nominative determinism that has been demonstrated in other groups' naming conventions as well. Countries that call themselves Democratic Republic of are never democracies or republics. The Patriot Act is not patriotic. The city of brotherly love is infamous for being full of assholes. Islam is not a religion of peace. And these people calling themselves Antifa are the fascists, and these people claiming to fight for social justice are being socially unjust. You aren't evil for laughing. You aren't a bigot because you won't apologize. You just want to be free to find a silver lining of joy in life's fucked upness. Learn to be. Yearn to be. Proud to be. Un-PC. Greg Dratsab Huffman.